January 12th, 1926. The Detroit River is a jagged plain of black ice under a sliver of a moon. The air is so cold it feels solid, a physical weight against your skin that seeps through the thick wool of your overcoat and settles deep in your bones. Out here, in the dead center of the international border, the silence is a living thing, broken only by the low growl of wind and the ominous groaning of the ice sheet. It is a sound like a giant turning in its sleep, a constant reminder that the 2-foot-thick bridge you are standing on is temporary, that the dark, freezing water of the river is waiting just below. This is Joe Adair's office. He stands beside the unlit headlamp of a Packard Twin 6, its engine idling so quietly it is barely a murmur. He is not a large man, and in the gloom he seems more like a shadow than a person of substance. He wears no fedora, just a simple wool cap pulled low. In his gloved hand, he holds not a Thompson submachine gun, but a silver pocket watch. The crystal fogs with every shallow breath he takes. He clicks it open. The minute hand approaches the 12. 3 minutes to arrival. His lieutenant, a hulking figure named Leo Lefty Rourke, stamps his feet, his breath pluming in the frigid air. "Anything, Joe? The signal?" Joe Adair does not look at him. His eyes are fixed on the distant dark shoreline of Windsor, Ontario. He does not need to look at the American side. He knows his men are there, hidden in a warehouse near the docks. He knows that at precisely 2 in the morning, a man named Sal will strike a match, light a cigarette, and hold it in the 3rd-floor window for exactly 10 seconds. If the light vanishes before the 10 seconds are up, the convoy is to turn back. It is a simple system, and because it is simple, it is foolproof. Joe deals in systems, not in luck. "Patience, Lefty," Joe says, his voice flat, stripped of warmth by the cold. "The schedule is the schedule." To Joe Adair, this is not about crime. It is about logistics. It is a problem of supply and demand, of moving a product from point A to point B with maximum efficiency and minimal loss. The product happens to be $20,000 worth of Canadian club whiskey, and point B is a nation thirsting for it under the thumb of the Volstead Act. But those are merely variables in a much larger equation. He is an engineer, and this frozen river is his private railroad. As the second hand on his watch sweeps past the 45-second mark, a pinprick of light appears on the Canadian shore. 1, 2, 3. It blinks 3 times, a prearranged signal. The first truck is on the ice. Joe snaps the watch shut and slips it back into his pocket. "They are moving," he says. From the darkness, a new sound emerges, deeper than the groaning ice. It is the strained rumble of 6 Ford Model T trucks, each one heavily modified in Joe's own garage. Their chassis are reinforced to handle a payload of 150 wooden crates apiece. Their front wheels have been replaced with heavy wooden skis to glide over the snow-dusted ice. Their engines, tuned for torque over speed, are fitted with custom mufflers that swallow the worst of the noise. They appear as lumbering specters, their headlamps off, navigating by experience and the faint moonlight. They do not drive in a straight line, but follow a zigzagging path that Joe himself mapped out, a route that avoids the known weak points and pressure ridges in the ice. He has paid fishermen and river rats for months to chart the river's winter moods, to understand its currents and its character. The information is all logged in a small coded ledger he keeps on his person at all times. The lead truck, driven by a man who once piloted ice-cutting boats, slows as it approaches the midpoint. The convoy spreads out, increasing the distance between each vehicle to distribute the immense weight. 900 crates of whiskey. Nearly 34,000 pounds of glass, liquid, and wood, plus the weight of the trucks themselves. Lefty nervously fingers the Colt 1911 pistol holstered under his arm. "This part always gets me. Feels like we are standing on a damn coffin lid." Joe Adair watches the lead truck's tires bite into the ice, the driver steering with practiced ease. "It is not a coffin lid, Lefty. It is an artery. It carries the lifeblood. And like any artery, it must be kept clear, clean, and flowing on a predictable timetable." He looks back toward the American shore. Sal's cigarette should have appeared and vanished by now. The 10-second window has passed. The path ahead is clear. He raises a gloved hand and flashes a shielded lamp twice. The convoy picks up its pace, the engines groaning in the cold. It is a symphony of controlled power, of risk calculated down to the last ounce. Every driver, every mechanic, every watchman is a cog in a machine of Joe's own design. They call him a bootlegger. He thinks of himself as a transport engineer, and tonight, his machine, his perfect clockwork operation, was running precisely on time. The convoy is within 200 yards of the American shoreline, a dark, industrial silhouette of warehouses and dormant cranes. The most perilous part of the journey is nearly complete. Inside the heated cab of the Packard, Lefty Rourke allows himself a small, tight grin. He pulls a silver flask from his coat, the metal cold to the touch. "To the engineer," he murmurs, unscrewing the cap. "Another clean run." Joe Adair does not acknowledge the toast. His gaze remains fixed on the approaching shore, his body unnaturally still. His senses are not celebrating. They are scanning. He is listening for the subtle change in the engine's pitch that signals a struggle, watching the slight fishtail of the last truck in line. To him, the mission is not complete until the last crate is stacked in the warehouse and the last man is paid. The final 200 yards are just as dangerous as the first. And then, his vigilance is rewarded. It is not a sound he detects, but a light. A brilliant, piercing beam that slices through the darkness from the roof of the old Port Commission building. It is not the subtle flicker of a match from his man Sal. It is the blinding, interrogating glare of a military-grade searchlight. The beam sweeps across the ice, a white scythe that erases the shadows and turns the snow-dusted river into a stark, overexposed photograph. It catches the third truck in line, freezing it for a moment in its harsh light, the driver's face a mask of shock behind the frosted windshield. Lefty's flask clatters to the floorboard. "Federal agents!" he hisses, his hand instinctively going to his Colt. Before he can finish the sentence, a second beam ignites from a patrol boat that had been hiding, dark and silent, behind the pilings of a derelict pier. The air is suddenly split by the deafening wail of sirens. Not one, but at least three. Their rising and falling howls echoing across the frozen expanse, sounding impossibly loud in the previously silent night. This is the moment where other operations would devolve into panic. Men would scatter, ditch their cargo, and run for their lives. But Joe Adair's operation is a machine, and he has built fail-safes into the design. "Formation Delta," Joe says, his voice as level and cold as the ice beneath them. He does not shout. He does not need to. The order is relayed down the line by a series of coded flashes from handheld lamps, a system practiced to perfection in a remote Michigan field. Formation Delta is not a retreat. It is a calculated dispersal. The 6 trucks, which had been in a single, load-distributing file, suddenly break formation. They peel off in 3 pairs, veering in different directions, their engines roaring as the drivers push them to their limits. The plan is simple. They cannot catch everyone. It is an exercise in acceptable losses. Joe is sacrificing the part to save the whole. On the roof of the Port Commission building, Agent Wallace Bryden of the Prohibition Bureau lowers his binoculars. "They are scattering," he barks to the Detroit police officer next to him. "Do not let them reach the shore. Use the vehicle stoppers. Fire on their tires if you must." The night erupts. The sharp crack of rifle fire joins the cacophony of sirens. Bullets ping off the metal hoods of the trucks or kick up showers of ice. The drivers swerve wildly, the heavy skis on their front axles fighting for purchase. The once elegant clockwork precision has become a desperate, chaotic scramble. It is this chaos that threatens to destroy them, not the federal agents. The zigzagging paths, the sudden acceleration, the sharp turns. It all places an unpredictable, violent strain on the ice. The low groaning that had been the river's constant murmur begins to rise in pitch. Joe watches from the Packard, his face impassive. He is calculating. 2 trucks heading northeast toward the old tannery. 2 heading directly for the rendezvous point, drawing the most fire. 2, led by his most experienced driver, a man named Mac, are veering southwest toward a shallower part of the riverbank he had identified as an emergency exit. Then he hears it. A sound unlike the rifles or the sirens. It is a deep, resonant crack that seems to come from the very bones of the earth. It is not a surface split. It is a structural failure, a fracture. He sees it happen to Mac's lead truck. The vehicle is moving at nearly 25 miles per hour when the ice directly in front of it buckles. A spiderweb of black lines radiates outward from a central point. Mac tries to swerve, but the momentum is too great. The heavy wooden ski on the driver's side dips, then plunges through the surface. The entire front end of the Model T lurches violently downward, and the sound of snapping wood and tortured metal cuts through the air. The truck grinds to a halt, its headlights pointing into the black, churning water of the Detroit River. It is trapped, its engine still running, its back wheels spinning uselessly on the unbroken ice, threatening to tear the entire sheet apart. The world slows to a crawl for Joe Adair. He sees the trapped truck, its front end swallowed by the river. He sees Mac, the driver, struggling to open his door against the pressure of the ice. He sees the second truck in that pair skid to a halt 20 yards behind, its driver, a young kid named Danny, staring in horror. He sees the federal agents and Detroit police converging on the southwest position, sensing a cornered target. Lefty Rourke grips the steering wheel of the Packard, his knuckles white. "We have to go, Joe. Right now, we are a sitting duck." The engine is running, the escape route they had planned. A quiet service road behind a row of abandoned fish canneries is still clear. Logic dictates immediate retreat. But Joe's mind is not on retreat. It is processing a cascade of new variables. The trapped truck contains 150 crates of prime Canadian Club. More importantly, it contains Mac, one of his most loyal and skilled men. The second truck contains another 150 crates, and Danny, who is barely 20 years old. The approaching law enforcement represents a complete tactical failure. The ice, now compromised, is a catastrophic environmental hazard. "Turn on the lamp," Joe orders, his voice betraying no emotion. He is not looking at the escape route. He is looking at the unfolding disaster. "What? The feds will see us plain as day," Lefty protests. "Do it." Lefty's hand trembles as he flips the switch. The Packard's powerful headlamp cuts a single bright path across the ice, illuminating the crippled Model T. In the sudden glare, they can see Mac finally force his door open, scrambling out onto the tilting hood of his truck. He is soaked to the waist in water that is mere degrees above freezing. Joe leans forward, his eyes narrowed, analyzing the geometry of the situation. He notes the angle of the sunken truck, the pattern of the fractures in the ice, the distance to solid ground. He is not seeing a man in peril. He is seeing a complex engineering problem that requires an immediate, unconventional solution. "Drive toward them," Joe says. "Are you insane?" Lefty shouts, his voice cracking. "They are shooting, Joe. That is a federal agent with a Browning automatic rifle on that roof." The ice is thicker closer to the old pilings. Mac's truck is acting as a pivot point, a temporary anchor. The stress is radiating outward. If Danny tries to reverse, the torque from his wheels will shatter the ice behind him. If he stays put, the weight will eventually take them both down. "We have to alter the equation." He points a gloved finger. "There, to the left of Danny's truck. Go." Hesitantly, Lefty puts the Packard in gear. The big car lurches forward, its studded tires biting into the snow. It moves out of the shadows and onto the frozen river, a flagrant, almost arrogant act of defiance. The searchlight from the patrol boat immediately swivels and locks onto them. Rifle shots ring out, closer now. One bullet smacks into the Packard's reinforced radiator with a metallic clang. They ignore it. Joe is focused entirely on the two trucks. As they draw closer, he rolls down his window, the frigid air blasting his face. "Danny!" he yells, his voice carrying with surprising force. "Chain and winch! Now! To Mac's rear axle!" The young driver, who had been frozen with indecision, snaps to attention at the sound of his boss's voice. He fumbles in the cab of his truck and emerges with a heavy tow chain. Mac, seeing the plan coalesce, crawls over the wooden crates in his truck bed to reach the rear axle. His movements are becoming sluggish, the cold already beginning to paralyze his limbs. From the shore, Agent Bryden watches in disbelief through his binoculars. What in God's name is he doing? Is he trying to save the cargo? He focuses on the Packard, a luxury vehicle moving with deliberate calm into the middle of a raid. He sees the man in the passenger seat directing the operation. It is not the wild panic of a cornered rum runner. It is the cold precision of a field commander. "That's him," Bryden says softly to himself. That must be the engineer. Lefty stops the Packard 50 feet from the disaster, turning the car to keep the engine block between them and the rifle fire from the shore. Danny secures the chain to Mac's truck, his fingers clumsy with cold and fear. He tosses the other end to Mac, who struggles to hook it onto his own vehicle. The ice beneath them groans, a long, mournful sound. A new crack appears, branching off toward Danny's front wheel. "It is not going to hold, Joe," Lefty yells over the din. "It will hold long enough," Joe replies. He is not just trying to save his men or his cargo. He is running a live diagnostic on his own system, identifying a point of failure. The ice was supposed to hold. His calculations had been perfect, but he had not factored in the unpredictable variable of a federal raid and the erratic movements it would cause. It is a flaw in the design. And Joe Adair does not tolerate flaws. Mac gives a thumbs up. The chain is secure. "Danny!" Joe shouts. "Reverse! Gentle on the throttle! Gentle!" The kid scrambles back into his cab. The Model T's engine whines as he puts it in reverse. The chain goes taut, groaning with the immense strain. The rear wheels of Danny's truck spin for a moment, then find purchase. Slowly, impossibly, the nose of Mac's truck begins to rise from the black water, shedding a cascade of icy water and broken ice. The operation had failed, but the recovery, this intricate and desperate maneuver under fire, was becoming a testament to the engineer's control. Agent Wallace Bryden watches the scene unfold with a mixture of professional fury and grudging admiration. He has been chasing liquor smugglers on the Detroit River for 3 years, a frustrating game of cat and mouse played against a shadowy consortium of gangs known collectively as the Purple Gang. But this is different. This is not the work of brutish thugs. The coordinated dispersal, the practiced emergency protocols, the audacious recovery attempt under the barrels of federal rifles, it speaks of a mind that sees beyond the simple act of breaking the law. It speaks of a strategist. "Concentrate fire on the recovery vehicle," Bryden commands into the handheld radio, his voice sharp. "Disable it. I want the man in the Packard." On the ice, the screech of metal on metal fills the air as Mac's truck is dragged backward. Water pours from its engine compartment. The vehicle is a wreck, but it is moving. Each foot it gains from the fracture point is a small victory. Danny, guided by Joe's shouted instructions, feathers the throttle with surprising skill, preventing the wheels from spinning and further compromising the ice. The rifle fire from the shore intensifies. Bullets thud into the wooden crates on both trucks, the sharp crack of splintering pine followed by the tinkle of shattering glass. The distinct, sweet smell of Canadian whiskey begins to perfume the frigid air, a costly form of aromatherapy. A stray round punches through the windshield of Danny's truck, missing his head by inches and burying itself in a crate of old smuggler behind him. He flinches but keeps his foot steady on the pedal. Joe Adair registers every lost bottle as a debit in his mental ledger. He's not just losing product, he's losing the profit margin that pays for the trucks, the mechanics, the drivers, the lookouts, the bribes. This single, compromised run is threatening to wipe out the profits of the last 10. But his face remains a stony mask. This is no longer about profit. It is about proving the integrity of his system, even in the face of catastrophic failure. It is about his men. "Keep coming, Danny! Another 20 feet!" Joe yells. Mac, now shivering violently from the cold, has managed to crawl into the passenger seat of Danny's truck. His job is done. Lefty, meanwhile, has his own role. He swings the Packard around, positioning it between Danny's truck and the shore, presenting the heavily reinforced body of the automobile as a shield. It is a deliberate, calculated risk, drawing fire away from the more vulnerable transport vehicle. The passenger side of the Packard is now pockmarked with dents from the incoming rounds. "They are bringing in the heavy machine gun, Joe," Lefty says, his voice tight, glancing at a new flashing light approaching the Port Commission building. "We have maybe 1 minute before they can set it up." 1 minute is all we need, Joe says. He looks over at the other 2 pairs of trucks. As designed, they had drawn the attention of the patrol boats and the other police units. He can hear the distant sounds of sirens and gunfire echoing from further down the riverfront. His diversion is working. Formation Delta has succeeded, even if its anchor point is currently a disaster zone. Those 4 trucks, carrying 600 crates of whiskey, would make it to their secondary drop points. The night will not be a total loss. With a final, groaning lurch, the front skis of Mac's crippled truck clear the fracture and slide onto solid ice. The immediate danger of the vehicle sinking is over. "Unhook it! Leave it!" Joe commands. "Danny, get out of here! Rendezvous point Charlie." There's no time to argue. Danny slams his truck into first gear. Without the immense weight of the waterlogged vehicle behind it, the Model T leaps forward, its engine screaming. It veers away from the Packard and disappears into the labyrinth of darkened warehouses and alleyways that make up the Detroit waterfront. Now, only the Packard and Mac's abandoned, whiskey-soaked truck remain on the ice. The sirens are closer, the shouts of the federal agents clearer. The heavy thumping of a Browning M1917 machine gun being mounted on a tripod echoes from the shore. "Our turn, Lefty," Joe says, as calmly as if he were asking for the time. He finally allows himself to lean back in the passenger seat. He reaches into his coat, and for a moment Lefty thinks he is reaching for a weapon. Instead, he pulls out his silver pocket watch, clicking it open. He studies the face in the dim light of the dashboard. 3:16 in the morning, he says, almost to himself. 16 minutes behind schedule. Unacceptable. Lefty stares at him, dumbfounded. They are under fire, minutes from being overrun by federal agents, and Joe Adair is concerned with his timetable. But that is the essence of the man known as the engineer. The crime, the danger, the lives at stake. They are all just data points in a vast, ongoing logistical problem. And for the first time, his perfect machine has been thrown into chaos. The cost was not just in the lost whiskey bleeding into the Detroit River, but in the 16 minutes of lost time that represented a flaw in his design, a flaw he would now have to correct. "Go," Joe says. Lefty needs no further encouragement. He stomps on the accelerator, and the Packard Twin 6, its powerful 12-cylinder engine roaring to life, spins on the ice and rockets toward the darkness, leaving the federal agents with nothing but an abandoned, broken-down truck and the lingering scent of very expensive whiskey. The garage is located in a nondescript brick building in Hamtramck, a city within the city of Detroit, known for its Polish immigrants and its deliberate policy of looking the other way. The air inside is thick with the smells of gasoline, motor oil, and hot metal. The space is cavernous, large enough to hold a dozen vehicles, and meticulously organized. Tools hang on pegboards in neat silhouettes. Spare parts are labeled and stored in wooden bins, and the concrete floor is swept clean. This is Joe Adair's sanctuary, the heart of his entire operation. It is less a den of thieves and more a high-performance automotive laboratory. It is now 4:30 in the morning. The 5 surviving trucks from the river run are parked in a neat row. Their drivers, including a still-shivering Mac wrapped in a thick horse blanket, are gathered around a pot-bellied stove, drinking coffee laced with a healthy dose of salvaged whiskey. The tension from the ice has dissipated, replaced by a low hum of exhausted adrenaline and quiet relief. They are alive. 4 of the trucks are already being unloaded by another crew. The crates of Canadian Club pass down a human chain into a hidden cellar beneath the garage floor. Joe Adair stands at a large workbench, away from the men. He is not drinking coffee. He is not celebrating the survival of his crew or the recovery of 2/3 of his cargo. Under the stark glare of a single bare bulb, he is methodically disassembling the carburetor from a spare Model T engine. His movements are precise, economical. His focus, absolute. Lefty Rourke stands nearby, watching him, a deep gash on his cheekbone where a piece of shattered glass from the Packard's side window had struck him. "The kid Danny did good," Lefty says, breaking the silence. "Held his nerve." "He followed the procedure," Joe replies without looking up. "He uses a small wrench to loosen a brass nut. The procedure is designed to be effective under duress. And Mac, he is lucky to be alive. That water is cold enough to stop a man's heart." "Luck is the residue of design," Joe murmurs, quoting a line he had read in an engineering journal. He places the brass nut in a small metal tray. "Our design was flawed. It did not account for a coordinated multi-unit federal response. We were anticipated. That is not a failure of luck. It is a failure of intelligence. He finally looks up from the carburetor, his gaze sweeping over the assembled drivers. They quiet down, sensing the shift in the room. This is not a social call. This is a debriefing. "Sal," Joe says, his voice cutting through the garage. A thin, nervous man detaches himself from the group and steps forward. It is Sal, the lookout who was supposed to be in the third-floor window of the warehouse with the cigarette. "What happened at the rendezvous point?" Joe asks. His tone is not accusatory, it is inquisitive, like a scientist asking about a failed experiment. Sal wrings his hands. "They were waiting for me, Joe. 2 of them. Detroit cops. They came up the back stairs, no uniforms. They must have known I was there. They knew the signal." Joe absorbs this information, his expression unchanging. He turns his attention to another driver, a heavyset man named Paskey. "Route 2. Did you encounter resistance?" Paskey shakes his head. "No, sir. Clean getaway. Just like you drew it on the map. The coppers were all down by the port. We were at the secondary drop before they even knew we were gone." Joe nods slowly, his mind piecing it together. The feds and the police were not everywhere. They were in one specific place. They were at Rendezvous Point Alpha. They knew the location. They knew the timing. They knew the lookout signal. The leak was not a general piece of information. It was specific, detailed, and tactical. Someone had given Agent Bryden a copy of his schedule. He walks over to the Packard, which is now parked in a repair bay. A young mechanic is already carefully removing the pockmarked passenger door. Joe runs his gloved fingers over a deep indentation near the window frame. "A Browning automatic rifle," he says to Lefty. "Bryden is escalating. He is treating this like a war, not a customs violation." "Then we escalate back," Lefty growls, touching the gash on his cheek. "We find the rat who sold us out, and we make an example of him." Joe looks at Lefty, a flicker of something almost like pity in his eyes. "Violence is a tool of the inefficient, Lefty. It creates noise. It invites chaos. We are not butchers. We are engineers. We do not solve a structural problem by hitting it with a hammer. We identify the weak point, we analyze the stress factors, and we redesign the system to be stronger." He turns back to the men warming themselves by the stove. "The ice route is compromised. As of tonight, it is permanently closed. We move to the spring protocol. From now on, everything comes across on the water. That means the speedboats need to be ready in 1 week. Engines overhauled, hulls repainted. I want a full diagnostic on the Grey Ghost by morning." The men nod, understanding the shift. They are used to Joe's sudden, sweeping changes of plan. "The drop points are also compromised," Joe continues. "All of them. We will establish a new network. Lefty, I want you to scout locations in River Rouge, old industrial sites, places with deep water access and multiple exit routes." He pauses, letting the orders sink in. He is not just patching a leak. He is rebuilding the entire aqueduct. He is abandoning a successful, profitable system overnight because a single flaw has been exposed. To the other bootleggers in Detroit, this would be an insane overreaction. To Joe Adair, it is the only logical response. You do not repair a faulty foundation. You tear the building down and lay a new one. "And find out who Sal's contact was at the precinct," Joe adds, his voice dropping slightly. "Find the man we pay for the schedules of the federal patrols. I want to know who else he's been talking to." He turns and walks back to his workbench, picking up the carburetor as if the meeting is concluded. The message is clear. A mistake was made. A price was paid in equipment and product. Now the work of correction begins. As the men disperse to their new tasks, only Lefty remains, watching his boss. He understands the cold logic, the focus on systems and machines. But he also knows that beneath the engineer's calm exterior, a different kind of calculation is taking place. One designed not just to fix the machine, but to identify and ruthlessly eliminate the single faulty component that had caused it to break. The following week, the Detroit River is a different entity. The thick ice sheet has broken apart under the rising March sun, becoming a treacherous, shifting field of gray and white flows. For most smugglers, this in-between season is a dead zone. Too much ice for boats, not enough for trucks. Operations halt. Speakeasies run low. Prices spike. It is a logistical nightmare. For Joe Adair, it is simply a new engineering problem. He stands on a damp, creaking pier in a secluded cove downriver from the city, near the industrial wasteland of Zug Island. The air smells of coal smoke and something vaguely chemical. Before him, tethered to the pier, is his solution: the Gray Ghost. It is not a boat. It is a weapon. Originally a 16-passenger vessel designed for ferrying wealthy tourists, it has been stripped down and radically rebuilt in Joe's Hamtramck garage. The passenger cabin is gone, replaced by a long, open cargo hold reinforced with steel ribs. The original marine engine has been replaced by a monstrous 12-cylinder Liberty L-12 aircraft engine, salvaged from a decommissioned de Havilland bomber. It is a power plant that was designed to pull a 2-ton airplane through the sky at 120 miles per hour. In the water, it is pure, unholy overkill. The entire boat, from its waterline to its deck, is painted in a flat, non-reflective gray that makes it nearly invisible against the choppy, overcast water. Tonight will be its maiden voyage under the new spring protocol. Mac, his hands now fully recovered from the frostbite, is in the pilot's house, checking the gauges. He is not a boat captain by trade. He is a mechanic and a driver. But he is also Joe's most trusted man, and he possesses an innate feel for powerful engines. Joe trusts instinct when it is backed by competence. "She is thirsty, Joe," Mac calls out, his voice betraying a hint of nervous excitement. "Fuel pressure is good. Oil temp is climbing." Joe nods, his eyes scanning the river. He holds a pair of military binoculars, not looking for patrol boats, but studying the flow of the ice. The main channel is opening up. There's a clear path about 50 yards off the Grosse Ile shoreline. You follow that until you pass the old salt mine, then you cut directly across. The current is faster there. It will help cover your sound. And the pickup? A fishing trawler, the Sea Serpent. She will be waiting 2 miles south of Amherstburg in Canadian waters. She will not have any lights. You will identify her by the single smokestack. You give them the signal, 1 long flash, 2 short. They will guide you in. This is the new system. Faster, louder, but designed for a different kind of evasion. The ice run was about stealth and precision. The Gray Ghost is about overwhelming speed. The plan is not to avoid detection, but to be gone before any law enforcement vessel could possibly react. Lefty Rourke arrives, his footsteps heavy on the damp wood of the pier. He looks troubled. "A problem, Joe." Joe lowers the binoculars but does not turn to face him. "Did you find him?" "I did," Lefty says. "Officer Miller? The desk sergeant at the precinct we have on the payroll. Turns out he has a sister with tuberculosis. She's in a sanatorium up in Howell. A private one. Expensive. Miller's salary would not cover a month there." Joe remains silent, watching a large ice floe drift lazily downriver. He already knows the next piece of the puzzle. "Agent Bryden of the Prohibition Bureau made him an offer," Lefty continues, his voice low and angry. "Federal money. They paid for the sister's treatment for the next year. In exchange, Miller gave him a copy of our winter schedule. Times, routes, signals, everything." Joe finally turns. His face is calm, but his eyes are hard, like chips of granite. "Where's Miller now?" "In the back of my car. He is cooperative." "And his sister?" "Still at the sanatorium. Bryden is making the payments directly." Joe looks from Lefty's angry face to the monstrous engine of the Gray Ghost, which is now idling with a low, throaty rumble that makes the whole pier vibrate. Agent Bryden had not just bought a source, he had bought leverage. He had found a man's weakness and exploited it with cold, federal efficiency. It was a move Joe could almost respect. But respect did not preclude response. Bryden had treated this like a war, so Joe would provide him with a casualty. But not in the way Lefty expects. "Take Miller home," Joe says quietly. Lefty blinks. "What? Joe? He sold us out. He nearly got Mac and Danny killed. He cost us a truck and 75 crates of the good stuff. The boys are expecting—" "I know what the boys are expecting," Joe cuts him off. "They are expecting a body in the river. They are expecting a hammer. But a hammer is loud. A body brings more police, more federal agents. It creates more problems than it solves. It is an inefficient tool for this particular task. He walks to the edge of the pier and looks down at the churning, ice-choked water. Bryden used Miller's sister. He thinks he is in control. He thinks he owns our source. We are going to change that. From now on, we own Miller. We will pay for his sister's treatment. We will double what Bryden is paying. And in return, Officer Miller will give us everything Bryden is planning. Schedules, raid targets, informant names. Bryden wanted an intelligence asset, so we will take his asset and make it ours. Lefty is stunned into silence. It is a brilliant, cold-blooded move. It turns a liability into an advantage, a betrayal into an opportunity. It is not about revenge. It is about control. Now, Joe says, turning his full attention back to the boat. Tell Mac to get ready. It is 7:54. The first run of the new season launches in 6 minutes. Precisely. The machine had been broken, but the engineer had redesigned it, stronger, faster, and now with a new, critical component deep inside the enemy camp. The Liberty L-12 engine does not roar to life. It detonates. The sound is a physical blow, a concussive blast of 12 cylinders firing in sequence that rolls across the water and echoes off the steel mills of Zug Island. It is the sound of industrial-age thunder, a deliberate and defiant announcement. The era of silent running is over. Aboard the Grey Ghost, Mac grips the helm, the entire vessel vibrating around him like a living thing. The power is terrifying. He pushes the throttle forward and the boat surges, its custom-designed planing hull lifting it out of the water. It does not cut through the waves. It flies over them. The ice floes that would cripple a normal vessel become mere obstacles to be dodged at incredible speed. In seconds, the boat is a gray blur, throwing up a massive white wake behind it as it tears a path down the dark channel. Joe Adair stands on the end of the pier, his overcoat flapping in the prop wash. He does not watch the boat itself, but the shoreline. He is timing the response. He consults his silver pocket watch. It takes exactly 94 seconds before the first searchlight beam cuts through the night from a known police watchtower downriver. Too slow. By the time the light finds the Grey Ghost's wake, the boat itself is already a mile away, a faint, receding engine roar. Lefty Rourke returns from his car, having dispatched 2 of his men to handle the delicate matter of Officer Miller. He understood the offer, Lefty says, shouting to be heard over the lingering sound of the engine. He looked relieved, believe it or not, grateful. Fear is a temporary motivator, Joe replies, his eyes still on the river. Leverage is permanent. Bryden offered him a solution to his problem. We offered him a better one. It is simple economics. A second searchlight joins the first, and the distant wail of a police siren begins to drift from the shore. The authorities are scrambling, reacting to a threat they had not anticipated. They were prepared for slow-moving trucks on ice, not for a speedboat powered by an aircraft engine. They will adapt, Lefty says, stating the obvious. They will get faster boats. Yes, Joe agrees. And we will get more powerful engines. We will build a second boat and then a third. We will establish new routes, new timings. Bryden thinks he is fighting a gang of bootleggers. He does not understand that he is fighting an engineering firm. He is competing against a logistical system that is faster, more agile, and better funded than his own.